Everybody's got a price. Everybody's gonna pay.
Whoa, you gotta love that laugh. Holy crap.
There's one from the past. Man.
Yes, yes. The guy, I wonder how many people are gonna figure out where that came from. If you guys know where that came from, post it in the thread because it's classic. That's all I'm gonna say. It's classic. Welcome everyone again to another episode of the Ravens Voice. Tierson here, and as always, with me is Ellis.
Hey, everybody.
So the reason for the theme this week, we had a patch rollout. We talked about it last week, and we had a new patch come out on Tuesday. With that came a lot of DLC content, and we're gonna go right into it here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just knock out the plugs real quick. You guys should, if you haven't yet, you should all go to ArmoredCoreLegacy.com, the most active forums for Armored Core. Again, ArmoredCoreLegacy.com, and you want to send us an email or just you want to give your opinions via email, or maybe not so much on the forums. Go ahead and send an email to RavensVoiceACL@gmail.com. Okay, so the reason for that. We had the patch. And with the patch came a lot of DLC content. Now, last time with AC5, I mean, they had some initial small ones. They were basically like the promos that they gave, reserve the game here and get this version, which came with one of the older weapons, and I think maybe a couple other things. There was 3 of them, wasn't there?
Believe so. Let's see. When we had that initial release, I know. Well, we had the modelers pack too. That was for
That's the thing. We had the modelers pack that came out.
Right.
And that was the only, I guess, real DLC content, which was vast. It had a lot of stuff. And that was $10. That was $10 on PSN.
Mm-hmm.
This time around, they want a lot more money from you. And from me. And from everyone else. It's kind of funny because we were talking about DLCs for Verdict Day, and we had assumed there would be a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we were more talking in line of what they did with 5. No. And if you haven't checked this out yet, you need to go to the PSN or the PlayStation Store. There's a lot up there. Unfortunately, one of the things that we thought we would definitely get, at least it hasn't come out yet, which is more maps, more versus maps. Nothing for that, but just about everything else.
For sure, especially with the new edition of voice packs, we've had some of the part recolors, and this is extended, beyond just a few frame parts, some weapons there. There's multiple categories we have recolors for. New garages for all of you that love that. I know we sure do.
Yes.
Having more places to customize than always rocks. Those of you that picked up the DLC pack with the original AC5 and during vanilla probably remember we stopped around the modeling table, roughly. There's probably one garage after that, I believe, with the KD05, the massive MT from Executive Sector. And we've got an extension on garages. There's some really fun areas there too, including the Reaper Squad spot. And it's kind of nice to see some consistency there. We knew we'd be getting an update with that, and these were some things that From wanted to be rolling out. And from there as well, we've got some UNACs too. There's some UNAC designs posted. If you haven't delved into that feature as much, if you wanted to check out some of the more official pre-designed models, they're out there too. Now, we don't know if this means the monthly UNAC thing. We spoke a bit about this, how this is going on JP's side, that each month there's supposed to be a new UNAC design that's released from the From team. Initial predictions, just me personally at least, I think we might just get these in bursts if we do get them. Maybe we just get 3 or 4 or just a few at once, because there were a couple in this DLC bundle, if anything.
6 of them.
Right. So more than a couple. So I don't, just from that initial release, I don't necessarily know if those will be just a monthly timing. But if we do get them in bursts, so be it. If they're a little different, okay. But they are there. So.
And the thing about this is, foreshadowing the fact that, for AC5 they did it very differently. They came out with those few initial things that were the promos basically, and then you had the modelers pack, and that was all bundled up together, one huge thing for $10.
Yep.
This is a lot different. You can buy everything individually. If you just want to spend a couple bucks, you can do that. But like like we did, because we purchased a couple of these things today. We both got all the workshops. Very cool stuff. Very neat. I'm in love with the was it the EGF or is it yeah, it's EGF.
Yeah.
I love that map, or that workshop, I have to say. That's great. They're all pretty cool. And then we each they came out 2 new voice sets for you, one for Maggie from the story, and then one from Fat Man. And I got Fat Man, he got the Maggie one. A lot of fun. They're a little bit more, but how would you explain it? They're a little more, how would you say it, Dallas?
I'd say they're a little more, I think, immersive, if that's the right word for it.
That's a good word for it.
Think, yeah, with the whole experience, you usually just have your computer, your internals just saying, really mandatory things about your energy or your status updates, but they're more involved with the whole process. They'll kind of bark at you or urge you on a bit, or
Yeah. At one point, Fat Man makes fun of you a little bit, kind of heckles you a little bit if you're doing bad. Which of course I found immediately because it's well documented. I'm no good at this stuff, so he was yelling at me a lot. But no, but what isn't available is a huge bundle for the whole thing. I mean, there's the compatibility pack, which you need in order to continue playing, but that's not the same thing, obviously. There is no big bundle to get it all. You're gonna with the Monos pack from 5, you spend $10. You're gonna be spending at least $30 to buy all this stuff.
Yeah, there's quite a few separate elements and whatnot. It was kind of a surprise, really. I think some people.
I was thrown by it. I was, and hence the theme tonight, because they're laughing all the way to the fucking bank. So,
if anything, this is, in my opinion at least, one of the first real big expansions, From has done in terms of their DLC content. One thing we spoke about since AC has really had the ability to have DLC is the possibility of expanding the current world, what we have. A long while back when we used to speak about what online could be or what it would be, was the possibility of just continuing the parts pool, besides the balancing, or adding on extra missions or simple things like that. Some of those things would almost alleviate a lot of the things we see for expansion titles in a lot of ways. Now, we don't have that yet, okay, and not sure if this is expanding towards that, but at least in the process, you're getting a ton of bells and whistles. And a ton of aesthetics. Another thing too with aesthetics that was part of this package was the look of your pilot. Actually customizing your appearance if your AC gets wrecked.
There's 2 of those. So if you can stand running around like that, I don't know why you would, especially if you can follow from someone else's perspective. Yeah, I think one of them's like a can or something. I'm looking at a post that Non-Hunter did while we're talking here about this, to give a little bit more specifics on this stuff.
Yeah. These were ones that I picked up. I didn't look at everyone very specifically. I remember there was one, something along the lines of a customize your pilot in the form of like a UAV or something like that, and there were a few options for that out there. So plenty of bells and whistles, tons of aesthetic touches. Not the Armored Core, the MMO yet, if that were ever to happen, but nonetheless, it's an interesting move, and I don't know if this is going to be a continuing trend with them, or do they want to just get it to about this phase and stay in a median. It'll be neat to see. So.
I'm looking real quick here. I think I saw something about. I don't think there's any true new parts in this, but I thought I read something kind of a prelude to maybe some actual new parts.
If we were to get new parts, I would have thought this would be something we would have heard mentioned in the depth, if anything. I think what a lot of players are probably accustomed and attuned to by this point are waiting for the patch changes, and the alterations in the weaponry. We've had this recently, for the some of the laser rifles and most of the other parts, and shield beam, and etc. If anything, I think those will provide some of the gameplay tweaks that people look for, or what gets pointed out. And it seems things have been relatively in sync with what players have been looking at. Last week we spoke a little bit about um, some of the Provost changes and whatnot. And it's neat. This was something that we've been speaking about on our forums, on lots of places, not just on ACL, but on Reaching Perfection, a number of other places. So to see patch changes concordant with that's cool. That shows an element, I guess, of being in some kind of sync with where these weapons are developing and where they're going. And by all means, I think that should just continue. The next new parts pool we'll probably get would be in a brand new AC, if anything.
No, I don't see anything in there about new parts. Prelude. There was a trial download, and so no new parts in any of this stuff. Nothing that would that you build with that's brand new. No new cores, no new weapons, nothing. There's repaints and stuff. But if you want to get all the money that you need to buy all this stuff, there's a perfect opportunity coming up in November. War for November starts in less than a week.
Yes. We have an event that has been plugged in the tournament and events section over on ACL. Be sure to place a link in the description for that for any of you that are curious. Again, we spoke a little bit about this last week. This is a PS3 exclusive event. It, of course, is for Verdict Day, and it's a Conquest event. This will be taking advantage of the World Mode system. So some of the prizes, they're all listed. But the one that we're kind of nudging you about, that we're kind of talking about here, are for either 4 $20 PSN cards or for 4 AC SD model kits. And you probably want the cards if you're going for all the DLC for the participating team.
Because we have no investment in this. Nope. Those model kits look like crap.
Some of you might want your Alia or your Supplice or your Rosenthal, your White Glint. They're all there, but
your White Glint.
It's there.
See, that makes me want to win it just to throw that in the trash.
Because you would.
Yeah, you
would.
would. It's like I do a whole video and horrible things I would do to that White Glint model. I'd put them together all nice and everything just to trash them.
And that's why I'm never letting you anywhere near the model kit I have. But going from there, though, the way this event is going to be structured, we have a number of people from the ACL staff, Tierson and myself included, that will be merking for teams. Now, points are going to be awarded to teams that either win with an ACL staff mercs team or qualified merc. And again, those who are qualified are listed in a specific list in this thread if you're curious. But points will be awarded to the team that either wins with or if you win against a qualified member. So 1 point is awarded per win, and no points are deducted for losses. This is a very continuous event. It's something that is going to stretch very far. In fact, you can sign up anytime, starting now. In fact, starting now all the way into November 28th.
I don't know about the end date on that, but I know you can continue to sign in November.
Yep.
But you should obviously want to try to sign up before November, and then just play and do your team world mode stuff, and keep a spot open for the merc. Don't throw the merc in the curator spot though. That's just that won't do anybody any good. No, but then just keep keep playing, and the more you end up with one of us in your team, or you end up beating one of us in the opposing team, the more points you get. We keep track of that. We turn it in at the end of our game. At the end of our gaming session, we turn it in to Cheng, and he does whatever Asians do with the numbers. And I said that.
This guy. So keep it.
That's bad. Yeah, I know.
Keep an eye on the thread. Look at if you're looking for any specifics, some of the main rules that are involved, or any of the teams that are already signed up. It'll all be there for you. So just tune in and check that out, and keep healed.
So, not the only event going on. Still have the Armored Core contest. Do you have style? That is by Drac, who is hosting that. It is a complete aesthetic design contest for all generations of Armored Core, going from 1 all the way to now. Mm-hmm. You can enter in ACs multiple times. He's looking for kick-ass, awesome-looking ACs, and the ones that look the best are going to win. I'm not sure what you win, but you win. So that is until November 12th. Mm-hmm. So get them in by then, and he says if you don't get them in by then that's just kind of tough shit. So
This would, I think this would be a time for any of you that have retro garages. I see these posted all over the community. We have a lot of sections now for the PlayStation 2 era and the past era of AC, sometimes even PS1, depending where you visit. So if you think you had a killer paint scheme, or just a killer look, or the way a set of parts synced, this would be your place to use it. Come check it out. It's kind of fun. This was something that was came right out from one of our members, straight in the community. It's always nice to see these things being pushed. So come on out, throw your designs in, and participate.
no, it's always good. Now we're gonna announce an announcement. I know that's horrible, but we're gonna do it because we're excited about this. We're just gonna say right now, next week during the show, we are going to be announcing a new tournament that will be coming up in the not too distant future. It'll be sometime in early December. That's all I'm going to say about it. Besides the fact that this is probably be, it's a little bit of a hint as to why this is happening, what it's all about. This will probably be the most important Armored Core tournament you will ever participate in.
So, if that's not enough of a bait and lure, not sure what is. Stay tuned. Look for details on that. They will be upcoming very soon.
We got a lot of stuff going on here in the first half of the show. So if you're looking for the topic of the week, weapon arms, which we definitely want to get into, that will be in the second half. We've got still a lot of more things that we're talking about here. Then we'll take a break. I know some of you like to know, when are we going to get to the meat and potatoes of the show, and that's going to be in the second half. So, kind of rewinding a little bit back to the patch. And I know there's been a couple posts, I think, on ACL about the specifics for the patch, but if you want it straight from the horse's mouth, you can just go to facebook.com/armoredcore, and you can find details and all. I believe this is everything. And this was not a huge patch.
No.
A lot of content that you can purchase, but there wasn't a lot of changes. Several weapons and parts have been changed, and you can go to, like I said, facebook.com/armoredcore, and you can find all the information on that.
All listed and all in order. It's interesting too. You're looking at the timings from when we had things dropped. As we know, last week we were discussing what had changed on the 360 side with Sash, and now we've got our PS3 side in tandem and in coordination with that too. So, as we know, a lot of our community does play on PS3 side, so it's really key to tune into these things when they come out. I'm sure a lot of you already have. You've got very close list of how each part changed and whatnot, and what are the updates if you need to make any alterations to some of your main designs. So nice to see some follow-up with lists being posted via Facebook. I just know in the past the forums were a place that I would default to finding a detailed list, but now we're finally getting some of this stuff plugged through an official site, so good. Thank you.
I mean, for my WoW days, people would always post up the patch notes and stuff, but I'd always go to the source, give it to me. And actually, I'd always go to the source, and then there would always be things that they didn't note in the patch notes. For some reason, they always did. There was maybe a dozen things that they just didn't want to say publicly or whatever. Right. And there would always be a post for that. Now, I haven't seen anything for that for this patch for this game. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe everything was a nerf.
We can see from our list just what we have listed. Specifically, this was one for weapons for the most part. For this, there were some minor changes with the lightweight RJ, specifically the LRLB 111. There was an adjustment for that, and then there was some turning performance that was changed with the Ryugen. And a few other things, but this is mostly for weapons. We had laser rifle, shotgun, and mainly handguns.
This was, everything else looks like it was a nerf. This was a fix, and this was something that Zio had pointed out, that the tracking was, or the lock-on, whatever, was just wrong, and it was broken. That's been fixed. So.
Yep, the lock-on speed becomes. The glitch was when you were tuning it upon purchase that if 1 or 2 points were scored in it, then the lock would become really finicky, or it would be thrown off. But apparently that's been fixed. So a lot of tone downs, a lot of cuts in that. But these are always interesting, and these type of notes aren't just a simple arbitrary listing to just look at what's changed. I think they're high indicators of where a lot of things have been happening with online play. This data has been collected for a reason, and obviously we're getting things patched for a reason. So always interesting factors to look at. I think there's a lot of great discussion material here, especially as the meta for this game continues to develop. That's another thing, we hit on a lot last week. There's a lot of combinations that have not been explored, a lot of things that have not fully been expressed yet. And here's our initial burst into the patch foray. So some of that remains to be seen, whether most people are going to still make use some of these things, or if we're going to kind of gravitate towards some other things. I'm thinking it's the latter. But there's still plenty to find and plenty to explore. And I'm sure lots of hard-hitting combinations are still expected to be seen on the field.
No doubt, no doubt. Okay, so, while you're on the Facebook page, and again, that's facebook.com/armoredcore, you're welcome to that. So while you're there, go ahead and scroll up a little bit while you're looking at the patch notes. This was really interesting. This did show up on my Facebook thread while I was on there earlier this week. Pretty interesting backstory. This actually, it kind of fleshes out the very confusing and very hard to follow story of AC5 and gives you a little bit of a backdrop here. Because, obviously you played 5, you know that, obviously if you played 5, you know that there's one of the towers which are prominent in both games. There's one tower in 5, but there's 7 of them in Verdict Day. And if you pay attention a little bit, probably one of the questions you have is, well, which one of these towers is the one from 5? If any of them are at all. Well, one of them is from 5. And it goes a little bit. It's a little bit of lore, which I know, kind of funny for Armored Core. No, but it is. It's actually an interesting read, and it kind of fleshes out the story from 5 and how it connects with VD.
It's neat too. We were talking about the mystery of these towers, I think, a couple weeks ago when Moonwalker was here. Especially, we were kind of lamenting how we didn't get an in-depth view inside one of these things. We didn't have an epic, multi-part last mission. Maybe going through the internal structure of one of these. But no, this is pretty fun. The AC series, especially in terms of story, has normally been left open for so much speculation and for so much rumor. I mean, you would think an assassination happened or something. And we never really get a whole lot of word from an official source on these things, or things to expound and help us connect said dots. Now, we've done that as a community more than enough, not just in the past, but currently, making links between some of the older games to now. I know a lot of people are talking about AC4 Answer and 4, it's to 5 now just because of what we've seen in Verdict Day, things like that. But here we have, an official post really expanding on, as Tierson mentions, the lore of AC, if you can believe you're saying that about Armored Core, if anything. And
I'm still not over the fact that you actually use a JFK assassination reference to Armored Core. My brain still wrapping around.
I wrap around it, man. You may as well at this point, because this stuff has just been a black box. It's just been plopped in front of us, and we've been left to interpret so many elements. So, the whole thing ends with, a stay tuned for more behind the scenes and whatnot. And I'm actually kind of curious myself what they would like to reveal. They being, Namco, from whoever wants to, which party wants to expound on this more, what we're going to see actually develop on that. I think that's going to be kind of fun. So,
and kudos to you, sir. That was impressive. The reference was so perfect. This brings me to two things that I want to talk about. Part of this has to do with the modeler for the new DLC content, the modelers pack from the past. If you got the AC5 modelers pack, the DLC, you got some new you got some new workshops from that. And one of them is actually it's one of the big giant weapons that you fight, the one with the double finger hands. Old school and new school reference at the same time. I love that. Is giant AC, and you get a workshop. I forget what it's called. I believe it's called like Father's Workshop or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that giant AC is in the background. Mm-hmm. And ironically, that they make a direct reference in Verdict Day saying that, once you beat the game, once you beat the story, that giant weapons are going to start coming out from these towers and such. So, I mean, that is actually, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the only time we do get any kind of look in these towers is in that workshop.
Could very well be. This is another one that I think that we're going to be talking about. I'm actually curious to see some of the community thought on that. If you have some thoughts, post up to see if you believe that there's a connection there. Do you believe that's something completely separate? Myself, that's interesting. I think I kind of tend to localize the I think KD05 was his name, if I remember right. Correct me if I'm off on that, but I tend to localize him back at that, executive sector mission as one of the massive, corporation weapons. Not certain if that is a garage, but from the titling, from the labeling, one would just lead you to believe that, certainly.
Well, that giant thing had to come from somewhere, and I mean that Father is the big dominant bad guy in the game, and there it is, and I believe that is called Father's Workshop or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the current title myself now, but yeah, that's actually one I want to dig into a bit too. So
yeah, they doubled down on that whole thing with the giant weapons coming out of the towers and such, and so interesting stuff. Especially because you are let down a little bit in BD because they keep on talking about the towers and defending the towers, but you never go in them. And kind of ironic that when they have the biggest presence, you don't go in them. But we actually had a workshop that was inside there. So, all right, From Software confusing its player base 16 years later. That's awesome stuff. To continue the confusion, if you did get the DLC pack from 5, if you do get the workshops that came out with these current DLCs, you will notice something. There are 4 workshops missing. It jumps from 5, you have 1 through 9, and then you go to 14 to 18 with the new ones. We're missing 10, 11, 12, and 13.
So if we're just being completely blind or just senile and can't see, let us know. But other than that, there does seem to be a glaring bald spot between the garages, and I don't know if that's a simple numbering issue, if that's intentional, that the ones that we have were supposed to be backscaled for that numbering convention or not. But just a little oddity that popped up.
Or it's just From Software driving us crazy yet again.
It could. It's time to go start data mining and see what you can go find.
But if you guys have theories or ideas or actually some concrete proof as to what those 4 missing workshops are, where they're supposed to be, if it was just an error in their numbering, that would be great. Because I mean that's a mystery. And I was like, well, okay, where are these? My theory is that we were supposed to get some new workshops at Verdict Day, and they ended up not putting them out, and that's where I think those 4 are on. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so let's see, what else do we have we want to talk about here before the show? Or before the second half. Okay, so continuing on to the web-based stuff, we've been wanting to talk about this for the last few weeks, and I finally remembered to put it in our show notes, and I tried taking a look at this yesterday, and that is the ACVD link. This is really cool in theory. This is really cool in theory. You go to it's plastered everywhere. It's plastered in the in-game. Yep. I'm actually hold on. I'm gonna go there real quick.
Cool. And the good part about this too is I'm kind of interested to see or just kind of hear some more of your thoughts on it here. So now you've been delving more into this aspect of it than I have too, as far as for getting things displayed right. So yeah.
So it's link.armoredcoregame.com, I believe, is what will take you to this. And then you pick PS3 or Xbox 360, and then you have to make a Namco Bandai ID, and you have to link it up to your PSN ID. And then apparently you're supposed to be able to access all kinds of cool stuff, like the screenshots you can take in game. You can actually get those on your computer. You can look at stats from your team, stats for yourself specifically with your ACs and you as a player. Here's the thing. I tried doing this yesterday, and it still has not linked up to my PSN ID. And yes, I know I have to go in there, and I did go in there and link it up myself. It's still not linked, though. And to make sure I wasn't crazy with this, I went and I talked to Chang last night, and he said that his linked up immediately, but he has heard that it's taken as much as 2 days for this to link up sometimes for people. That's horrible. I'm a little upset about that. I mean, why? I could understand it taking a couple days when it first came out. All right, I could not help but to feel like I was over at healthcare.gov last night.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, there's a reference that I'm sure most player base won't get, but some of you I'm sure will. But it felt like it's like, this is broken. What's going on? I linked up. Like, what's the problem? I'm very much looking forward to being able to do this. I wanted to give us a review of this tonight. That's why I went there yesterday to try to get it going. I can't. I'm on there right now. It's still not linked up. It looks like it could be pretty neat. I can't wait to get my hands on those screenshots. And plaster them everywhere. But because that's just something you haven't been able to do unless you had like a capture card or something with hooked up with your computer. So
Right.
very much looking forward to that. But right now my review is it doesn't work. So, and I know it has been working for some people, but it's not working for me right now. And the fact that at this point, a month after the game's been out, this is taking a couple days, that's pretty weak.
Yeah. If anything, if you know, let us know if some of you have tried to mess with this, if you've had an A-OK green go, or if it's just been a totally murky area for it and you can't get it to work. Again, this is one I haven't messed with a whole lot myself, but it's a fun feature. You know, this has taken me back to when people would show off their designs on a forum and just help people visualize better. They'd have a shaky cell phone picture or something snapped from like a digital camera or like in video mode or something like that, or just, you know, straight from their TV. Now we can get that in much better clarity, ideally at least through a method like this, but hopefully the
I
kids
could
get out of
never
it.
stand things like that. Like people, when they take the pictures off of their TV, or like if they like set up their
Yep.
video camera to record with the TV. I mean, it looks so bad, and you can like hear the volume sound, the sound sounds really bad. And normally in those videos, you can hear like somebody's dog barking in the background or something. It's like, oh come on, just stop.
We have a few members out there that I preserve. I mainly see this on ACG. We have a couple members out there who kind of preserve that, I think, via SIGs. You know, they leave it as screenshots, but they'll have, for example, if they've had a running staple or a running series of designs, they'll have them displayed next to one another, you know, from the past all the way up to current. That's kind of cool. So,
Okay, one last thing I want to talk about before we go to break.
mhm.
No, part of the discussion and topic from last week was the sharing of information with
Yeah.
the community. You know, huge topic. And we talked about this a lot off of, you know, when we're not recording. We talked about it with, you know, with the rest of the staff over at ACL, and we talked about it a bit. And obviously, before the show, we spoke with Sasha. You know, this is actually, I'm not going to say it's because of the show. I don't think it is. I think part of why we had the topic for the show was inspiration over this topic beforehand. But coinciding, I should say, with the show is that we are definitely getting some posts over at ACL with the sole focus of informing and helping the player base.
We are. We're getting a number of links, and you know this is something that some people in the community have started to become vocal about, and really just kind of requesting, speaking out about, especially some of our members who frequent, not just, you know, free play and free battle, but who have teams that are extremely active, who might be feeling, oh, you know, we're looking for, you know, more of a challenge. We're kind of waiting for, you know, more things to come up. This is interesting, and I think this is a way for a lot of members to become active in the process and contribute in a different way, besides just, you know, the gameplay and, you know, playing each other, but to also contribute, you know, just information. Period. You know, what are not just builds you're interested in, what are certain ways to maneuver said design, you know, what are some of your tricks for handling and whatnot, you know. A lot of these things, especially for someone I think new to the Armored Core series, they definitely aren't something that's just learned by osmosis. You know, I think this is where the community really steps in. There's only so much you can do with a starting tutorial and a starting guide. You know, it's the intricacies and I think the real nuances of the game that are best relayed by the community. I think it's how it was in the past. I certainly ardently believe it's how it is now, and hopefully the way it continues.
And I know that as far as the ACL staff is concerned, I know a couple of them, and I know Cheng is working with them. They're working on putting up guides, fairly good tutorials that I know they're putting a lot of effort into. They're working on that, but at the same time, like always godlike,
Oh yeah.
he started the post. In fact, he'd informed me of this as well. They didn't even know that it existed. Which was great because I don't always check the general discussion. Our general discussion section moves fairly quickly for an Armored Core forum, so I don't always catch all the topics that are in there. But he let me know this existed. You know, he's made the call out for himself and for other players who do very well in competition, saying, hey, you know, if any of the other newer players or anyone having issues or just questions, ask away. And you know, people really they're on top of that. They're, you know, and I think that's great, honestly. You know, and this is kind of what we were talking about before. I mean, this was information in previous games that was just openly shared. It was out there, and competition we had the LAN events, and I would say around the country there would be, for a while there was one going on every couple months. But as far as your region, maybe one a year, maybe two. I remember a couple times I squeezed in two of them in a year. But
Right.
this was great information that was openly shared. And this really helps people to become better players. So I'm really it makes me feel warm inside that people are sharing this stuff again. I mean, and it should be. And I think maybe it's a lesson learned from five, and everybody holding their cards so tightly to themselves and not sharing this stuff, at least not until the end of the cycle for race five. This does nothing but help everybody. If you want more competition, this is how it happens. Not everyone has all the time in the world to research this stuff and
Right.
figure it out on their own. Not everybody has the technical insight into the game to be able to figure this stuff out quickly. There's nothing wrong with somebody who wants to be a part of it and maybe giving them a couple tips.
Exactly, and I think the cool part about threads like this, it starts off, kind of goofy, people messing around with just light-ended questions, but you have just some really just straight questions. I think some things that people may not have put out in the open before for various reasons. You go through the thread, some of the other posts, just really simple mechanical things. Just what's the difference between stun and stagger? Also very close notes on some of the weaponry and how it works. I think there's a real tendency, for example, to hear about said group of weapons. For example, like some of the handguns. Having stun capability, and there's an assumption I think people can kind of run with that. Oh, they can just stun a full range of builds. As long as I run that. Well, it's not true. And looking at that, I think especially threads like this, you're able to refine that information a little closer, knowing that, no, that's not everything. That's mainly, stun applied to mids and lightweights, for example. So it's great. And I really hope that people don't just keep an eye on this thread, and try to, put decent questions out there, but that they just watch trends like this closely and can take whatever's developed here and either turn it into their own push, their own movement initiative, or take that information and, as Avengers so aptly put it, capture it and use it to the best of their ability.
It's always kind of good too to hear from people who understand so strongly the mechanics of the game, and maybe you don't understand them so well, but you're noticing things on things that you're using when you do this happens and such. It's always nice to be able to read a thread like this and at least get it confirmed, or at least build on that knowledge that you built yourself a little bit, or at the same time realize that what you thought was doing something actually wasn't. It was something else.
And the best part about this too, if I just jump in on that, is a lot of these threads will start off with maybe one member or a couple people with some really good ideas of some things to post, and they just kind of cast the net about it. But there's almost like an inherent understanding that it doesn't have to be that person who started that thread to just canonically answer every single post that comes up. If anything, you kind of find a trickle effect starting to happen. Others start to gather to the same point. Not Hunter has had a number of good posts in this thread as well, and that's something that just continues to build and grow. And that way, I don't think it becomes some kind of dictatorship about, well, this is the only source you can wait to hear X and X. No, I mean, this is a mechanical discussion of the game, of the parts, and where you should come if you would like a more cohesive understanding of how this game works. So
At the same time, a little bit of a caution, little bit of an asterisk here. This is all put together by the community.
yes.
And somebody could answer your question, and they could be wrong.
Yes.
So be aware of that too. That does happen from time to time. One of the things the Armored Core community loves to do, though, is when someone's wrong, you'll get monkey piled by a dozen people blaming you.
Yeah, you will know. You will certainly know if something is off. And if anything, I honestly can't remember a thread that I've seen things said. Please, show me where you've seen. If you've seen otherwise, but I cannot remember, to my current knowledge, a thread that's just set with specific misinformation with no one coming by to really note or help correct something.
All right, so we are going to take a break, and then we're going to come back in this weapon arms, part one of a two-part discussion. We'll explain that when we come back, but yeah, we're gonna take an in-depth look here at the reintroduction of weapon arms and VD, what's good, what's bad, what never should have been done, and a couple things that they missed altogether. So, all right.
Stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome back for the second part of this podcast, going into our weapon arms discussion for Verdict Day. This
Yeah.
is Zealous here and Tierson, enthusiastic as ever.
Oh yeah, I'm always enthusiastic. What's up?
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Thanks for hanging with us. Hey, so one thing we were discussing during break, this is something we totally glazed over in our first half, but it was well pointed out to us by Avalon and also a thread.
Give me the credit. Give the little intern some credit.
By Avalon, also a thread that popped up too. This has just been really recent on ACL. I believe Sash begun this one as well. This is super important to talk about. We're sitting here so busy talking about the things that we have listed in the patch and whatnot. Let's talk about the things that we've actually seen, in game, with our own eyes. Namely, that is the Vendetta nerf. Now, it's so interesting that we're talking about this going into a thread or a podcast dedicated to weapon arms. The change that was made was the blade length was reduced from 10 to 3. Now this is a really drastic change. Last week, if you remember, we talked a bit about how large the hitboxes for the Vendettas were, and the range, how it could often be really deceptive. A strike you thought you were out of, you'd still get pinged by pretty hard. But this is a pretty rough reduction cut.
No, it's not the size of the blade, but how you use it.
It's okay. Long charted debate, but I think this is the case where people are going to be missing that both ends of the blade here. I mean, for goodness sake, like,
Whoa!
what?
No, nothing. No, go ahead.
All right. Well, we have who is it? I think it's another thing that Zenos had echoed was this is almost reminiscent of the nerf that we saw to the USGs, even early on and during vanilla AC5. It is drastic,
It's like I said when I was talking about when I played WoW, and I would always go to the official patch notes,
Yep.
but then I would also always go to another set of notes, things that they didn't announce in the patch notes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I even made a comment about how I don't think that's needed here. Well, obviously it is, and thank you very much for pointing that out, Zenos.
For sure. So, as we delve right into our weapon arm discussion, whether you are a Valiant or whether you're a Vampire, whether you're more into PO8s or you're into Kashiwagis, however you deal with them, the weapon arms, they're here. They're a part of Armored Core again, and this was one of the more anticipated features we had coming into Verdict Day. Now, for some fans, they've loved them. They've loved a select few. For others, they just have not lived up to the hype. I know Tierson is in that camp.
Not fan.
Not a fan at all. There were a couple that I had loved, that I thought the Vendetta were mad stylish for many reasons. And also our AS missile arms. Yeah, I think they're one of the closest things we have to a genuine missile storm right now in Verdict Day. But here they are, and one thing we want to kind of do is just talk about the categories of our weapon arms that we have here and just the breakdown, what's available to us in Verdict Day. So
Before we go into the categories, let's do a little bit of an overview on these things.
Yeah.
Okay, first I want you guys to know how I approached looking at this. I approached this topic going in thinking, okay, I'm going to make an AC built around a set of weapon arms. And I'm going to pick the ones that I like the best. I'm going to look at them all. I'm going to look at the stats, compare them to some of the handheld weapons similar. Obviously, for about half the weapon arms, you can't. They're just different. But I went into it wanting to make a really cool AC out of it. So, at the same time, a couple things that I think need to be noted here. Using weapon arms, you have the drawback of not being able to use shoulder weapons, or items, I should say, shoulder slots.
Mm-hmm.
However, advantage weapon arms is that they can hanger cannons.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple pros and cons here overall. that exists for all of the weapon arms going into this.
Yeah, and part of some of the other preliminary notes that are important here that I think we have to mention are what's available to us, and what we have. In This is interesting too because in past ACs, the MG arms, the grenade arms, the linear arms, weapons like that were kind of what tended to fill the solid spaces for solid rounds and solid ammunition. Uh, Due to how the damage system works here, though, and the types of weapons we have available, you see that distribution kind of different, and it's just kind of interesting to note, where these have grown and why some of these choices were made for the weapons arms that we do have, and why those said categories are there. So, looking into this, as Tierson's kind of saying too, as well as design, coming into them and how they'll fit. Um, my line of designing with these is I think they're heavily themed weapons. I feel that if you equip them, that there's something that you tend to build around more instead of just a simple decoration on your AC. They have an impact. They have a large impact, especially in terms of your defenses. And obviously, they're going to influence a drastic part of your loadout by not having an inability to use shoulders and whatnot. So, um,
I disagree. No, I don't disagree. I'm sorry. No, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. That you have to build your AC around these in large part because you are seriously taking a couple hits with these things. Especially in the fact that you can't use any shoulder slots with this, which I think is a huge mistake.
I made the reference to, we'll talk a little bit more about it later too, but on the AS arms, how they feel like one of the closest things to a genuine missile storm. Um, I think shoulders coupled with that, now, given you can still couple sentries and do some unique things with that, but um, coupling an additional set of missiles such as like shoulders, extensions, whatnot in the past, that's what always made the barrage really varied. And you really got to pick and choose here. If that's like the design line you're going along, I still think we have a little bit to wait before genuine missile boats make a full return. But um, let's put a bookmark in that one for a second and just take a look at some of the part breakdown we have here. So one of the first categories a lot of you probably noticed, and this was in a lot of the Verdict Day trailers and a lot of the gameplay, is the horizontal cannon that folds behind your back, and that's our sniper cannon. Now, we have a couple initially, the
Yes.
Valiant, and the Vampire. They're slated to the right arm and left arm, respectively, depending on what slot you like your cannon. And other than that, pre-tune, your stats are really exclusively the same with these. And later, as you go on, you end up getting an additional pair, the two actually, the Venom and the Vipera, that have more of an ammunition capacity, which is sure always great, but less power behind them, and of course, less impact force too. Um, and this general outline of types of weapon arms we have available, we see so many of these things in pairs. I feel it's 2 and 2, 2 and 2, 2 and 2 across the board. Going into TE, going into CE. But it's really important just to pause a moment on KE and just take a close look at this for what we have. Besides our blade arms, besides the Vendettas, this is our only source of KE for weapon arms, and I think that's significant. So that really takes things down to physical melee and your range sniper, which also another very important difference here. It is not a sniper cannon that's equipped with the lock. Now, that's not a surprise for a lot of people. A sniper cannon is normally something that you do a full mount with and be stationary to fire. But if anything, I think that leads to some really interesting applications for this. We talked a little bit highlighting this on our previous podcast when combat tactic strategies, how this can be applied really well in a narrow area such as in mining sector, or maybe even in Alpine if you can catch someone in a corridor long enough. Many areas to do that for a quicker application of it. However, due to the design and due to how they function, these are something that naturally they're more of a specialty weapon. I suppose you can say that about many weapon arms, but these specifically, very interesting in terms of use.
Very niche.
Very niche. Off the bat, there's probably, I'm going to guess, probably not tons of people are going to come to them in droves looking to master them. I think they're one of those weapons that have a lot of potential. Some people may reduce this to simply the rocket argument. That, oh, well, that's what they are. They're just manual, and that's the
Well,
only.
technically, yeah, that is what they are.
As they say, it's the only phase you can mess with it. And I think they're a little special, though. For the impact force and the velocity, and especially the trajectory of the shot, they still function different. Because bear in mind, a lot of our rockets too, when you equip those, many of them go into spreads. Here in like AC5, or they spread in a large pattern, or you can help blanket an area or whatnot, or they'll shoot clusters. Whereas here, you're talking about a very just kind of long bore, just linear shot that you're looking at, and some of that, I think a lot of that actually requires a sharp eye for precisely where your target's going to be based, and how you're aiming. I certainly think it's within the realm of possibility for someone to come up with a great mastery of these and show some great, technical skill, use and finesse of them. But I think they'll take some work to apply for. So
These are neat. We talked a lot about these earlier today when researching for the show. I mean, these are pretty nifty. I don't have any particular problem with something like this being in the game. Obviously, yeah, I'm going to some negative areas for this. I don't see any real good reason why there needs to be two pairs of these. I mean, it is what it is. I see the clear difference between the two sets, but I don't really think there needed to be two sets. I don't think the difference is wide enough to where it justified that, especially considering how niche these arms would be. I'm sure there will be a couple players that really take on these weapon arms and just master them. And if they can truly do it, I mean, that's going to be deadly as hell. But because these are both powerful weapons. I mean, the damage, the muzzle velocity, they're good. There's really nothing else to say about that. What obviously the downfall is there's no lock on. But again, I don't think it justified two different sets of these. And one of my bigger problems with the weapon arms in general is a lack of variety and a lack of some definite staples over the years that should have been put back into the game. So when I see two sets of these, I get a little ticked off about it.
if anything, you look at the potential for the solid category, especially some of the developments we've had with Verdict Day, like the AST style BRs and whatnot. Of course, that's going to come in terms of CE damage, but there is definitely room for the advent of a new type of KE round or something else, or even heck, I'm thinking about it, even a type of railgun arm or something of that nature. I think it'd be interesting, but the KE pool for these weapons, at least in terms of variety, is relatively limited. Obviously, you're going to have your differences between each type of gun, but it's just kind of interesting where those pause. The KE pool of weapon arms feels rather brief at the moment.
Yeah, and none of them are lock on. I mean, you've got the Vendettas, you've got these, and none of the KE weapons are lock on at all. I mean, talking again about type of weapon arms that there should have been in here, perfect opportunity to put in machine gun weapon arms. Where are they? Or Gatling gun weapon arms, however you want to call them. They don't exist, and they really should. And I really think this game, 5 and Verdict Day, the engine for these two games really lends itself to have a set of those in there. Where are they?
This is also with 5/Verdict Day. I think this is one of the most in mass implementations of Gatlings. We've had the good old chain gun and the CNG 300, way back, and some of the other weapons. But Gatlings in force. I remember how excited people were when we had the M2 Gatling introduced around the time of NX or so. Finally, a hand alternative to using the chain gun, on the back. We have this everywhere, for 5 and Verdict Day. There's all different types of Gatlings, and one would think that would be an interesting spot to place a KE round. Perhaps from felt within the framework of what we have, that would be a part that would be too strong in a way, or a part that would be too much on the rapid fire or the power. But let's face it, they're controlling the stats anyway. So
I can almost see the argument of them, saying, well, we have so many Gatling guns in the game already, right. So many guns in the game already. But they made some weapon arms where there were already so many of some of these kind of weapons. Yeah. So that argument kind of gets thrown out the window.
Yeah. So as you're designing, as you're comparing, I think it'll be important to kind of take into mind, if you do choose to use a sniper cannon class weapon, if you it depends, not just what's happening for your team, but also what you're trying to achieve in your design. There's some designs, I think, and there's some themes that may simply just suit better for your standard, traditional Neil, and going with Urbson, some call the absurds, and some of the other weapons. But again, they deserve an examination if you're looking for something niche along those lines.
We talked. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. We're just going to spill right into the other cannons here. I was going to relate the into the PO8s that we kind of related to last session, but go ahead. I want you to finish that thought.
Well, I was going to say that we spoke of the Vendetta, but we didn't actually talk about it as weapon arms. So I didn't want us to skip them like that. I mean, obviously we're talking about the nerf they got, but the actual functionality of these, pretty cool. We talked about staples in the game, and obviously we got them with blading arms, blading weapon arms. Nerf or not, these things are fucking cool. That's all I'm going to say about that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of them, even pre nerf. If I'm gonna make a blader, I would still probably go with pile, or I guess a melee AC. I would go with piles or energy blades. But still, these things are pretty neat.
Yeah.
Definitely win. I think overall on the cool factor, maybe even the coolest weapon / arms in the game.
Definitely, and additionally too, because of just the way they function, in terms of when you deploy these things too. I think a lot of us expected simple double movement or like an overhead slash, but you get a full combo attack off it. So, for those of you who like to become Super Archangel Pulverizers, this is one way to do that. But it's one of the few weapons I've seen in Armored Core that allows a full combo attack from one equip. We've had various ones in the past. My mind immediately goes to 4 and 4A, the various blading tactics and everything. But here you have it. Off of one weapon. Your triple swing, and they're a blast. They're a lot of fun. So much you could do in the field with them. But obviously, they're really going to be in some pain from what's happened here with the blade and the actual hit detection you're going to have on them. So, if anything, hey, some of you might want to flock back to Murakumos if you even enjoyed those before, but that's really the only other solid blade that's out there, unless you're not counting the good old grind blade or the heat pile.
So we were going into the heat cannon?
Yeah, just a bit about those. And it's interesting. There's, I think, multiple modes of perception in these. It's kind of cool. Again, Sasha referred to these in terms of the CE cannons, and having an ARM version of that. I think some of you may be looking for heavier artillery to upgrade from your battle rifles. That's possible, but here you have it. This is a suite of weapons that allows you to do that. Coming into these, I really thought we were going to see the return of the mass howitzer, which is kind of what you get from this spread version essentially. But it's interesting, regardless of which way you frame it, what upgrade you're trying to do. They do pack a serious kick in terms of your CE attack and whatnot, and also there are a few oddities still, such as I just mentioned the Lotus being able to beat out some of the initial velocity of this weapon. I think oftentimes what a lot of people expect with weapon arms is if you equip for said category, you're looking for some of the cream of the crop for that, because again, the amount of features you sacrifice to use said weapon, you want those to go the distance. You want all your stats to matter for something, despite the fact that you're losing defense. So
we're talking about the heat cannons, not the heat shots. The heat cannons.
Correct.
Okay. Heat cannons, they're complete shit. They suck. Across the board, these weapon arms are garbage.
We have.
I say that with the seriousness because I mean it too. I use battle rifles often, and I use the heat cannons on my tank throughout 5. And I was very disappointed with these. I spoke about this, I think, a couple weeks ago on the show, actually. These things are just, the stats are just off. They don't match up. Obviously, you're going to put on more weight putting on arms with cannons. And I'm talking from the perspective of a tank, obviously, but comparing these, there's no reason to use them. They're too slow. There's not enough ammo. Yes, they're lighter, but you're paying for that in armor already. And this has to do with a lot of my view on the weapons arms, is that they got cut way too deep with the negatives in many regards, not in all regards, but in most regards. They hacked them pretty bad.
I don't have the raw data for this too, but I think it's interesting to mention. Another thing we spoke about in the past, back in 4A, the ability to get some additional velocity behind something like a Kojima missile. You could essentially slingshot it a little harder if you had enough of a forward thrust going. I think there's a slightly similar story to be written with some of these, just in terms of, I think, initial testing, some of the running and the initial velocity takes on these. That does seem to have some kind of impact with your forward speed. I would personally like to get some hard numbers behind that and to really delve into this to post findings, because I just don't want to, fully speak on the topic, as it's kind of baseless. But it's something that I've noticed while kind of playing with these, and if that were something that were to come to fruition, I think that'd be interesting. Now, given that would be kind of limited to a bit of a velocity fielding for these, and I think it would be a bit of a headache to have that in the back of your mind, moving at a certain speed to optimally get the firing that you want. But
There's reason for these things. That's what bugs me about them. Is
yeah,
that there's no reason for these heat cannon arms to exist. I can understand what they were trying to do with them, trying to put in a middle ground between battle rifles and cannons, but it doesn't work. They come out just being subpar.
and I think without some deeper research into them on the precise physics behind the velocity and whatnot, and what you can get out of them, um, it's relatively simple to stay along those lines of discussion with them. I think there's a little bit more to be written about these. They don't. They're a part that really doesn't appeal to me personally off the bat, but I am interested in how they interact with some of the mechanics in game. So
I'm
so that
not.
should be right.
I know, I'm being very definitive about this. I'm putting my foot down and bam. No, but I was very disappointed with
Yeah.
these. And that's where a lot of that comes from. And I spent a couple hours with these. I rebuilt my tank backwards and forwards playing with these. And I understand they don't necessarily have to be on a tank. But I rebuilt the whole thing up and down for a couple hours, trying to make them work, trying to not smell what I was obviously smelling, which was a giant turd.
So let me ask you this: did you find from what you ran, especially specifically on your tank, this same type of feel when you tried the heat shots as well?
So are we moving to heat shots?
Yeah, moving right into
Okay.
it.
I love the heat shots. I love them. I think they're great. This is and with like I said, I went when researching this topic, I went in there thinking, playing with all of the weapon arms, which one, what am I going to use? I'm going to make an AC with weapon arms. What am I going to make? And I'm pretty sure I'm down to two different types of weapon arms, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the heat shots, aka in my mind, CE shotguns. That's basically what they are. I think they're fun. They're cool. They're fun. I enjoy them. I think as far as all their stats overall in comparison to when you look at arms and with guns in their hands, these things are comparable. I do. I really like them.
Good. Good. It's interesting too. You refer to them as the shotguns, the CE versions of what we have. Um, Whether you want to apply, I think, this type of play via heavyweight or a midweight, or what you're looking for. Again, it'll be themed about around what type of punch you're trying to provide. I was looking at some of the notes a few of our members have had about what type of AC they want to bring into their team, and what they feel their team is missing, or what aspect they could better fill, or what gap would place better with that. And I think for some of you, that might be the focus. My team is lacking said punch. I think if I added this class of weapon, or if I theme my AC around a certain style, then we could help fill in a certain gap there. So test these a little if you're curious. I encourage you to play around with both of them. You'll probably find a little bit more validity in the heat, the shots, for our scatter themselves. But it'll be interesting to see, now that we have this balance between the weapon arms and the cannons, what people will be choosing in a team situation, in a team environment, and what people will be fielding in terms of free play. If they will be the same, or will they be drastically different depending on what the layout is.
I can sum that up for you guys. Heat cannons crap. Heat shots awesome. Well, and I want to say, because we haven't mentioned this yet, we mentioned it at the beginning or at the end of the last segment. This is a part one. I'm being I'm being a little silly about this. This
Yeah.
is part one of a two-part discussion. We are going to revisit this once the meta for the game has been decided. Once there's been some major patches and from puts all the weapons in places that they meant them to be, but maybe just weren't there originally. We are going to revisit this weapon arms topic. And we'll see where opinions have changed from that. But something like this deserves to be a two-part. But this is part one. This is initial reactions after playing with them and looking and comparing the stats for a little while. And we're going to do this again way down the road, and we're going to see where we stand and do a part two of this.
Right on. So, as we have a general outline of our CE, some of our CE weapons, there's a couple more down the lines. We were mentioning missiles and a few things at the beginning of this discussion. But just moving just right along here, our other category here we had was TE. And in TE, as you'll notice, we have pulse cannons available and we have laser cannons. Now, these really function essentially, obviously, to how the initial cannon versions function of them. With your laser, you've got your charge. There's a couple versions of the laser cannons. One's a more amplified version where packs more of an attack kick. Then you have your other the starting version. I think it's the Kashiwagi, if I remember correctly. And then we compare those to the pulse cannons. You remember back in Vanilla 5, pulse cannons, especially pulse cannon tanks, I think for some heavy designs did reach a certain degree of popularity, namely for how much devastation they could cause in a short amount of time. But here we have them again, the pulse and whatnot. And I haven't been able to hear from some heavy designated players, I know such as Cleric and a few others, on these, their thoughts as to how they stack up, how you feel they stack up against pulse cannons, the originals. And if you guys have any thoughts on that too, just the way you've been piloting, comparing up, please share your thoughts in the thread. I'm actually curious to see how the community has reacted to these versus the original cannons. But since I have someone who happens to love tanks sitting right next to me here, at least as close to me as he can be, Dearson, what have been some of your thoughts on pulse cannons, the weapon arms, compared to the original pulse cannons that we can have mounted?
I played around with this a little bit, obviously, when we were all on the same team, and I even built a complementary tank to two clerics. It ran around with that for a little while. I mean, I like tanks. I'm not huge on tanks. I like them a lot. Playing around with these, it's been a while since I played with the pulse cannons in general. I looked at the stats a bit today, and to be quite honest with you, this is I think I took a smoke break at that point. I came back and I started working on laser cannons. So, I did test these out a little bit though. I did take them into the testing area, and I guess I was indifferent on them. Certainly, this is a very similar situation to the heat cannons, whereas you have a handheld version, and then you have a cannon version, and now you have the weapon arms version. I looked at the stats a little bit. Honestly, though, I don't remember anything that stuck out. And it's like I didn't look at anything and be like, oh god, that's why would they do that? Why were those stats like that? And this doesn't make a lot of sense. Outside of my general complaints on weapon arms, which in general I believe not all of them, but basically most of them, I think that the weight and the energy costs for using some of these things versus everything that you get from them, especially armor. I think armor and firing stability, I think generally across the board is too low versus what you pay for in weight and energy. But in general, accepting that, I didn't really feel one way or the other about these. This would have been a perfect time for Clark to come in. I do remember talking to him early on with Verdict Day, and he did say that he was still a bit indifferent about it as well. He had played with them a little bit, but hadn't drawn any conclusions yet.
Right.
So, and I guess I'm kind of the same. Sorry guys, I'm going to be a little weak sauce on that. I guess I think they're fine. Again, accepting all the faults that I believe generally exist in these weapon others. I think they are what they are.
Moving on, I think, to our last class of weapon arms, which we talked about. We foreshadowed a little bit with the missiles. We talked about missile boats a bit. Looking at our missile weapon arms, what we have with those, we got two different types here. It's important to note these are CE damage. CE is getting a lot of love here. We got the heat shot, we got the heat cannon, now you have the missiles, two types of them. You've got medium missiles, and you have your AS missiles. Now, I gotta focus on the AS missiles first because these are one of the parts that got me most excited when I was first looking at Verdict Day. It kind of looked like you're deploying your Mac power books and you're just gonna unleash a swarm of missiles, and that's, well, just what they do on the missile side at least. They are, as mentioned earlier, one of the closest things I have seen to a genuine missile storm in AC5, and it really reminds me of a lot of the barrages of old, especially the dual back units. Um, there's a part of me that would just love to see these things with shoulder AS missiles as well, to really make for a flow. And they're smooth to fire. They're fun to play with. Um, I just enjoyable weapons. Now, one thing I have heard a lot about them, I know Avalon, a few others had said, and this was also confirmed through some field testing, that you know they're they're not the most difficult thing in the world to dodge. When they're deployed, yeah. When they're deployed, it's not an oh my goodness, do I have AMS or I'm doomed? No, not necessarily. They're very escapable.
But at the same time, if you catch them at the right angle or you catch the
Yep.
person with the right angle, you're not going to dodge them, and that they'll mess up your world.
Oh
But
yeah.
overall they are a bit easier than the average missile to dodge, but not by much.
True. Very true. It was really interesting. I had assumed these were going to be like at least a multi-phase lock missile or something like that, but when I saw the part listing for AS missile, I was kind of pleasantly surprised by it. I guess it suits. If you think about it, the AS missiles in terms of barrage style missiles, they've always excelled well at that, especially when you dual shoulder them, dual mount them, and you can do your best 9-ball Seraph impression if you want, or which you probably aren't using it for. Essentially, you could use it for a good supplement for some of your other attacks. And AS missiles had an on and off relationship. I feel in terms of CE, they were kind of overshadowed by Dimapur, maybe even Shurat back in Vanilla 5. But these are a lot of fun. I already have quad with these mounted on them, and I was trying to look for some good ways to optimize them, if anything, because they're just a blast to play with. Probably one of the funnest things besides Vendetta, in my opinion.
Definitely, like you said, there's definitely a fun factor here and a cool factor. I know they don't look the coolest, but they're still pretty neat. Yeah, but no, they're a lot of fun, and there are some practical applications for these. I mean, it's a little hard to sell, so much for AS missiles like this. But I mean, if I think a person could master how to use these and do very well with them. Like I said, if you do get hit with all of these, it's gonna hurt. That is a match changer.
Yeah,
If you get hit by them a couple times, but one really good shot will really just change how you approach that entire AC while he's still got ammo in him. Um,
definitely.
but no, they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. Not much. Again, besides my typical gripes on the weapon, I got not much here. I mean, I just
Right.
basically everything that you said. They're pretty good. I think, in my opinion.
And I think the decent thing about them is since they don't have a base lock on to work off of, that kind of gives you some freedom of design here with the way you can drop your assaults without having to be at a certain look or a certain lock at your opponent, which is great. I think that's where a lot of the fun factor comes in. There's a lot of freedom in these, and I think you'll get a really smooth use of them. And it's interesting to compare those to what we have with our medium missiles. Now, uh, the medium missiles themselves each pack way more of a kick. They definitely hurt upon impact. The acceleration duration is way better on these, which is interesting too. That's something I tend to go off. I know in vanilla, the as long as that stat's active, the homing function activates, which really helps with your tracking and whatnot. So if you're looking for a good missile to kind of zone in and help get a steady barrage on your opponent, these will probably help you more in the accuracy department. um, I believe the second set had a faster lock, slightly faster lock, base lock on time. But the notes about these, like the power, like the amount of ammo that they provide you. You get about 160 shots out of these. When you're firing multiple volleys, that'll go by quicker, of course. But you get the biggest. I think one of the biggest differences between the two, with the initial, you get a max lock of 2, and then the second set you get a max lock of 4. So if you like your repeated lock volleys, that second set may be more for you. And they do have some decent accuracy behind them, but they lag behind the first a little bit in firing range and some other stats. So look at this closely. If you're incorporating missiles under your design, again, I know a lot of you may find smoother applications in shoulders, supplementing a really fun hand combination or something you may have. But if you want to give it all up for CE missiles, if that's the category you're specifically looking at, and you're done with the VTFs and some of the others, check them out. They might be worth looking at.
For all the missiles overall, you basically come away with the feel of, yeah, that's pretty much exactly how they should have functioned. That's exactly what they should be. There's nothing too surprising here. Obviously, the AS missiles that we just spoke about, those definitely stand out among the three of them, different weapon arms that we have. But I mean, they are what they are. I was thinking about this earlier. Armored Core 5, when it comes to the part that dominated, obviously I think the tank legs were AC5's. That was the tank legs days. I'm starting to think that maybe Verdict Day is the day of the missiles. They're everywhere. They're in abundance. They are a game changer. You can get them in all shapes and sizes. I mean, it was really, there's so many that I was like, maybe I would like this kind of missile with just maybe a little bit more weight, but not so much energy. There it is. They're everywhere. And of course, even without being able to tune them, you tend to not be wanting at all when it comes to the missile department, in my opinion.
The good side about them is they really haven't backpedaled a whole lot in terms of stats from what we've seen. We had some of the earlier patches for Vanilla 5 to really give us a little bit more out of these, for equipping them. They got an ammo upgrade, which was really, really nice and really welcome. And that's something that's continued. I was crossing my fingers that, going into Verdict Day, they wouldn't just go into a relapse and then have to go through another cycle of, getting their ammo count and some other stats back up. But, you won't have, the extension back mount combos that, we had in past games, but you got a ton of options here. Titan-style missiles, your vertical missiles, your high-impact velocity missiles, your multi-spreads, they're there. And depending on what you're theming your design around, how they'll fit, take a look at them. I think they could be a really fun part to add in addition. So, very cool.
So, Zealous, if we were to grade weapon arms as a category, your typical A to F grade, what would you give them?
A to F. Weapon arms as a whole.
Yeah.
Right now, and this will be interesting. Okay, mark our words here from where we're talking for when we pick up in part 2. I want to see if this changes, okay? Where we're standing now in terms of weapon arms, I would personally say C+.
I actually thought you'd give them a little bit higher than that.
I am literally right on the cusp of B. A B. A was immediately, I don't know, if something were to be A, obviously that would be, a genuine focus, kind of right on the money with them. And I just feel, and I know a lot of this is on me as well, probably for not unlocking everything about these as they should be explained yet. And I'm sure my grade may rise a bit as I, delve into them more. But they just missed that B for me off of the ones that I found tend to fit the themes that I've been aiming for in designs and how they tend to flow in mechanics and usage so far. They're just right there in the tip for me, and I get the feeling after some more time and experimentation that'll change. But right now, that stands as my official note.
I give him a D plus.
D plus. Ouch.
D plus. Yeah, no, I think it's a well-earned D plus. I think when it comes down to the core of what these things are, I think they stripped them way too much. I think in general, armor needs to be higher, energy and weight needs to be lower. As far as consumption, there's no good reason why we can't use shoulder units. I would love to hear the argument for that because I really don't think a good one exists for it. There's just, in the game of giving options, you bring in a brand new thing like weapon arms, at least to this generation, and then you take away something else. And we've already lost so many different options when it comes to building ACs.
Yep.
on a personal note to this, and yeah, this did factor into my grading, and some of you will probably disagree that, on a pure side of, on the technical aspect of this, maybe it shouldn't. I think in general, they designed, weapon arms as a whole, just incorrectly. There's a lot of really cool, fun weapon arms that don't exist in this game, and all they needed to do was pull from the previous games and put some of those in. And I think now, realistically speaking, when it comes to how weapon arms function and diversity, they really missed the boat there. Again, there's not a single KE weapon arm that has a lock on. There's some duplicates here, second sets that shouldn't exist. There's not enough of a reason, in my opinion, for them to have two sets of the sniper cannons. You could have put something else in there. There could have been something cool in there. There should have. I just think there should have been other things.
Yeah.
Now that being said, I don't give them anything lower because there are some really cool ones in there, and some of the stats in some of these parts I think is right on for the most part. I would have given them probably a solid C plus like you did had they not taken away the shoulder units. There's just there's no reason for it.
Right.
That's dumb. If they fix it, I'll give it back, but I don't think they'll fix it. That's too much of a change. I mean, they with 5 they did do a couple drastic changes to a couple parts, but I mean to change the whole category like that, I don't think they'll do it. But yeah, so there you go, and I'm sure I'll get blasted for a lot of my opinions as I usually do when it comes to parts and their functionality. But hey, that's all right.
Well, that's what our discussion forum's for, and again, it'll be neat to see how this evolves. I know part of my notes about these are really contingent upon what the community does with said weapons, how we grow with them, how we don't use them, or how we do use them. It'll be especially neat to see how this transitions to when we do our second weapon arm discussion to if opinions have gone up, if they've gone down, if we've had any type of patch changes with these, or do they just kind of sit in the mud, and just stay the same. So, time will tell.
So that's going to do it. I think we got a long one here tonight too, but a lot of stuff. We covered a lot of topics.
So with that in mind, remember the discussion thread for this podcast will be linked in the description if you're interested in stopping over at armoredcorelegacy.com to post up and just read what other pilots are saying. I gotcha on the plug. And also, don't forget, please email us at ravensvoiceacl@gmail.com regarding this podcast, any past ones, questions, concerns, anything in between. What's your favorite cookie? Why not throw that out there too?
Oh, in fact, now that you've said that, I demand that you email us and tell us your favorite cookie.
Please. Hey, so I'm a macadamia nut fan. Just putting that out there. M&M cookies. Oh, they're the best. I want to know, because seriously, I do a lot of baking for Christmas, and we're coming around to that. So give me some ideas, guys. Email me. I want pictures too, or you don't have to, but at least let us know your favorite cookie. We'll talk about this next week. We'll sit down with cookies. We'll have a chat about it. Right on. So until then, hey, we will be here again next week, same time, same place. Stay tuned, and thank you for listening. Have a good night.
See you next week.